Welcome to episode 2 of the Andy Stephen Hoops podcast, where the goal is to have some great conversations around the ecosystem of basketball. For this episode, I've got a great friend of mine, Dylan Fowler, strength, power, and mindset coach, aka Dylan Limitless. He's a previous international masters weightlifting representative for New Zealand. We worked together in multiple gyms over the years. I've been following his progress onto his online programs, and on last calculation, he's transformed over 100,000 lives through his face-to-face gyms and online programs. Welcome.
What's up?
How's it going, Matt?
Hey, good brother. How are you?
How was that intro for you?
Yeah, awesome, man. A little bit nerve-wracking sitting back here, and then you're like, oh, you got to go on. So, yeah.
You're not in basketball, but I think a lot of the stuff you talk about, share online on your Instagram and your socials is so relevant to guys like myself who are older, like late 30s, early 40s guys, but also up and coming young athletes, because you share a lot of your own personal stories as well. So we worked together at a gym called Function Well, or Athletic Zone, which was the CrossFit part of Function Well. We obviously parted ways, went our separate directions in terms of careers.
Yep.
I sold out to the man and went into the corporate ladder and so I went down that path. And you
man.
took the risk of jumping into your own business, which was very admirable. You put your true life stuff out there. You share pictures of your partner, your kids. And I really respect that. And why do you think that's important?
Yeah, I think it was a real turning point for me one time. Because I coming from New Zealand, it's probably the same in Scotland. Like when social media started, you'd think if you post, people like, who's this dickhead? Who's this wanker doing this stuff? And I was like, everyone's going to think I'm a wanker, all of this. And I remember just one day, this guy reached out to me on Facebook, and he's like, man, I don't engage with anything you do. I don't hit the like or anything. But honestly, man, some of the stuff you're doing has literally changed my life. And I was like, okay, from that day on, I'm going to get the fuck out of my way, get over myself, and just share it, man. And I've had like the understanding of the power, I guess, of your own story and your own vulnerabilities and all of that sort of stuff. And like I think in a way, like is probably almost like, without being too woo woo, is like I feel like it's just my duty, is to share sort of what I've gone through. Recent mentors and stuff like that, it's definitely become more and more clarified why it's important to go through this journey. Just from the amount of people it impacts, because they're like, oh, this guy's like me, or even the weightlifting stuff and that, it was sort of like that was my journey to prove to myself that I could do something. And it's also like now I'm training another guy he was actually the only guy that beat me in the Queensland weightlifting champs, but training him now to go on and try to become a world champion. And it's just we bonded through those stories and all of this stuff. And I think deeply from a personal perspective, I actually just share it because it's almost like a journal to myself as well. And then it's like I do understand the power of it, like I 100% know. And then even from a business perspective, there's two sides to what will make a successful sort of online business, and it's one is credibility. Got to be good at what you do, and then the other part's relatability, And so, like you sort of look at, I guess, your influences in that. They're very relatable. They're not always credible, but because they have that relatability element, and when the two match, it's just absolute dynamite for a business. And especially the deeper and deeper I go into sort of, I guess, the digital marketing aspect of things. Yeah, and I just enjoy sharing it. Really, I think it's useful to people, so I'll just continue to do it.
Yeah, I find the whole landscape of like influencers and content and social media like on a deeper level than just what you see in the surface is fascinating, right? Like just
100%.
reflecting
Yep.
on, I've been sharing my basketball knowledge for about 2 years now on different platforms, and sort of niching
Yep.
down who I'm getting my message out to and things like that, and also
Mhm.
balancing like putting content out there that I know will go viral, or
Yep.
putting out content which is really high intelligible stuff. However, you know that people are not going to sit down for 15 minutes to to learn about the stuff which is truly valuable to them. Because like
Mm.
I could put out a video of me copying a LeBron James move, um,
Yep.
and it might get 100,000 views. Uh,
Mhm. Mhm.
I then the next week put out a 3 to 5 minute video about three different ways of using the pick and roll if you're being double teamed, and I'll have 4 or 5 people reach out to discuss it with me, but I might only
Yep.
have 200 views. So
Yeah. 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 Yep.
I find, like, what's the value? Like, what's the value in the likes and all that? Is that what's valuable,
Mhm.
or is it the true engagement of the true niche of who your community really is?
I think,
Um,
yeah, yeah. I definitely have my opinions on that, and like just deeper and deeper understanding of it. If like ultimately, there's two sides to that coin, and I think now that people are starting to understand what I guess the internet is, and it's like, when we started as coaches, it's like the internet was there, but online didn't really happen until COVID, and so it was just literally, and like I say this to all the time to the young coaches that I mentor, is like, I was probably just lucky that Andy and Rachel left the gym because then I would get some clients, and it was sort of like that because no one knows you outside of where you are, so it's sort of like you're in those four walls, and that's where you sort of got. But now when you really, really start to understand, I guess the true potential of what the digital real estate is, of
mhm.
like that virality is, you do that for 5 years and you got 100,000 eyes, and then all of a sudden, like 30% of them have been watching you for those 5 years, and eventually, they become real fans. Um,
Mhm.
it's really, really interesting, man.
So where you're at now is you've kind of you've got your two things that I see sharing on a regular basis. You've got
Mhm.
Dylan Limitless. So at
Yep.
Dylan Limitless for those that want to follow after the pod on
Yep.
Instagram, and that's strength, power, and mindset coach. And then
Yep.
you've also got Dylan 10, so number 10.0 or
Mhm.
10.0, and that's
Mhm.
your marketing and mentorship for online personal trainers.
Yep.
Do you want to talk about Dylan Limitless?
Yeah, man. I appreciate that. And so yeah, Dylan Limitless was the next evolution, which is
Yeah,
I used to be formerly Dylan Evolved.
yeah.
And so our first gym was called the Evolved and all of that sort of thing. And at some point, I reckon I figured out, like, even though I'd evolved, I think, like, I realized, especially once our second gym closed down, we removed the four walls, and I just started to realize the limitless potential, which was, it was sort of weird how it all sort of comes about. And I found it was just the next evolution. Is like I had no longer evolved; I'd become limitless in a way. And it was also what I was starting to see, because I did like my high performance coaching certification with Brendan Bouchard, and that was basically a life coaching course. And I remember when I signed up for that course, I knew I was looking for something, because at that time I was mentoring. It was really interesting because when I started mentoring coaches, which is the 10.0, is I was like, oh, I'm just giving these guys everything that I did to have my online business where it was, and I was like, why aren't they doing it? Like, why don't they just go and do it like exactly what I did? And then I sort of realized there was 100% just a psychology, like, aspect to success. And so when I did Brendan Bouchard's sort of high performance coaching, I sort of realized, it was like, this is not what I expected it, but it's exactly what I needed. And it was It's been absolutely mind blowing, and since I've sort of done that, I've worked with some of the AFL girls, a lot of like some professional athletes, also just like quite high up sort of professionals and stuff like that. And in terms of, like, I share the strength and conditioning stuff, but I know my true power in that aspect is definitely this coaching aspect.
Mhm.
And I just remember like some conversations I'm having with people when they start the program, 4, 6, 8 weeks later, I'm talking to a completely different person. And
Mm.
it just blows my mind, man. Like I almost break down in tears. Like it's just wild. Like this complete unpacking of, limitless potential, which is very, very cool. Yeah, and so with that, we obviously have the strength and conditioning elements as well. And the last 2 years, when I was sort of maybe two and a half, like probably about 2 years ago, I sort of realized I had to probably step away from one, my gym, and then one, sort of the online coaching side of things to pursue the mentoring side of things. Um, and so for like the last 2 years, I've just tinkered away at sort of the strength and conditioning element. Hired a heap of mentors, worked like did Dan Garner's nutrition stuff, keep chipping away at some of my athletes. At the moment, working with a guy named Tom Shepherd. He's Christian Thibodeau's like head strength coach, and been with him for 12 months now. And I'm actually going to Columbus, Ohio, in about 8 weeks to do a bloody powerlifting course at his gym. I'm like, what am I doing? Flying across the world to learn how to deadlift, but um, it's just something I'm just relentlessly obsessed with, man. I don't know what it is about it. And people always tell me, it's like, man, like all my coaching friends now that are like, they're either selling their gyms or going to online or something. They're like, fitness isn't it, man. I'm like, well, you haven't taken it to the degree that I have, like in
Mm.
just the wanting to be a pure black belt in strength and conditioning. Like it's probably my least like to be honest, like I can make more money doing other stuff, but I just fucking love it, man. I really, really just love it. Yeah.
Tell me about when you say like unlocking someone and showing them what they are capable of, and seeing that difference. Like what are the first steps that you take with someone like that? Because from what I can see from the level that I've played and coached at, what we're seeing now is, in terms of basketball and the top players in the US, the gap
Mhm.
of international players to the sort of NBA is really closed, and is closing more and more. And I say to some of the young guys, if you put in like 1 to 2 or 3 years of hard graft and really get yourself around like a global perspective of your health, lifestyle, and mindset, there's really I hate to say it, I'm giving you a plug, but it is limitless, right? Like
Yeah.
of where you can get to.
100. Yeah.
So like what's the first
Oh,
step you
yeah.
take with someone? Like how do you like assess a current mindset of someone?
Man, like it's like in terms of assessments and mindsets, I sort of have, I guess there's two elements. There's probably a mindset, then there's mind skills, and like so generally like mindset, I think people sort of get it wrong. It's like when your mind is set, you'll do it. So that's like a mindset. So when you have that, you can assess someone and know like, hey, what's the block? And so the first thing is to assess the block. And generally that will start with awareness. I'm actually a bit of a believer in this, and I think because of my own journey of not really realizing my true potential and that sort of thing is like, I think for a lot of these guys, younger guys maybe particular, is like they just do not understand what they have in front of them, or their
Mm.
own potential, and maybe they just don't have the belief that even if I do put in the work, like I can go and do this. And I think that's why a lot of people now, like even some of my clients, are like, how can you like get up at 5 a.m. and like pretty much work till whenever you go to sleep? And I was like, well, it doesn't even feel like work. And I think like Kobe Bryant, he's like, when you understand your true potential, like you'll work every minute to make that potential happen. And so when you start those first assessments, it always starts with clarity. And one of the biggest things, and I think it's very, very powerful, is getting people to realize what has made them successful up until this point, and then asking like, what will make you even more successful up to that, and then It's a simple thing. If you just write down three things of like, how you want to show up and a task, and then you just put down like how do you want to show up at that task, and then give yourself a rating. And if you give yourself a rating, say out of 10, and you're like, hey, look, at practice, I want to be focused, I want to be aware, I want to be, like on in this game, and you're like, before you start the practice or whatever, and you're like, hey, I'm about a 6, and it's like, well, subconsciously you're not going to be a 6 anymore, you're like, I'm going to be a 7, so and it's honestly because everybody's different, and I think like working with the AFL girls in particular, like each of them, they've got a singular focus, a singular goal to be the best in their position, to win championships, all of that sort of thing. The way they get there is completely different, and so like that just first level of awareness of yourself is probably a big one. And then after that, it's just simply like, what is the block? Often it's a courage thing, like just being able to like generally, as long as there's ambition, like if people want to do something and like they're not actually moving towards it, generally there's some sort of fear that's blocking it, and you just start to unpack it. And an example of this, I had a friend I mentor at the moment. The dude fell out of a plane. So he was skydiving and his parachute didn't open properly, and he like basically crashed into the ground. Like he was just lucky he hit a tree, or else he'd be dead. And
Jesus.
yeah, it was really funny. And so anyway, he tackled that fear of getting back in that plane and jumping out again, And he's like, so on paper, this guy's got no fear. And I was mentoring him through because he wanted to start a podcast, and he's like, oh, I've got this one guy I want to reach out to. And I was like, why haven't you? He's like, I don't know. And then it was just this fear of rejection. Like, he's like, I
Mm.
can't do that. And so literally we unpacked that. He got this guy on the podcast, and then it's been crazy ever since. And so generally that's it, is like clarity and awareness is 100% the first assessment in terms of like finding what it is that makes you great, and then finding the block, and basically you just work through that. And sometimes there's like productivity and stuff like that in there and routines, but often it is really just allowing yourself to actually be great is quite a big one as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's that self-awareness is the number one thing that I see. That
100%.
I don't know if it's a generational thing or I'm just getting old, but maybe it's the social media generation where their self is portrayed on social media, but what they don't realize is self is actually portrayed in your actions and how people see you in real life. That's who you really are. So I
100%.
fear for the younger generation, and certainly that self awareness in face to face situations.
I
Um,
think I think potentially that too, man. Like sometimes with social media, so let's say you've got a highly talented player here in Australia, and then they look at, say, LeBron James, and they're like, oh, I'm not LeBron James, which means I'm not good enough to be in the NBA. So like I truly believe it's like they feel like they're a 1, this guy's a 10, and they're so far away. And it's like they probably don't realize how close they actually are. And I think that's like where a great coach and a great mentor can definitely help them see that pathway a lot better, eh?
mm. You're always and have always looked into mentorships, and you mentioned Christian Thibodeau, who's a top world renowned strength and conditioning coach. I think he's got the
Mhm.
Thib Army or something like that.
Yep, yep.
Testing my old bank of strength and conditioning knowledge, which is still in there somewhere. Um, I know you've worked with and me to a lesser extent, like Keegan Smith and guys like that. Like
Yep.
it's putting you on the spot a little bit, but who would you say like your top three go-to mentors have been over the years, and what would you have learned from them?
And in the strength and conditioning world?
Well, like mindset as well. Or I know you mentioned
Yeah.
Brendan Bouchard. Uh,
Yeah.
I'm
Yep.
aware of him, but I haven't dived into any of his stuff. But by the sounds of it, that would be a pretty cool investment to do.
Oh, it's wild. Yeah. It's sort of, I guess, over there's been definitely a lot of influences over the time. And I'd probably have to put Keegan up there 100%. Like, just I don't think if he didn't put the spark in my brain and like just said, "Hey, have a crack," I don't know if I ever would. And it's he's come to me at different points in my life, and it was sort of when I was at Function Well, and then sort of moved on, and he just sparked these ideas, and it's been crazy ever since that it's happened. And I think Keegan probably has a big influence on just making you see and believe the impossible.
Mhm.
And also just he almost reminds me of like Steve Jobs of, is like that quote where he says, it's generally the crazy ones that change the world, something like that.
Mm.
And like Keegan, for all his wild ideas, he basically brought Ido Portal to Australia. He brought the ice baths, Wim Hof, ketones. He's all these
Mhm.
early adopters, and then more recently, and I sound like I'm a bit of a cult here, but more recently, he sort of built his uncom villages, and he's like, "Oh, I'm just going to build villages around the planet where, good people can come and connect." I'm like, "Whatever, man, you're fucking nuts." But he's done it. There's 10 villages around the world now, and
Mm.
it's just people like that guy is just it's one is like he will make you believe in crazy shit, and then he just goes and does crazy shit.
Mm.
In terms of the strength and conditioning stuff, definitely been helpful over the years. I honestly think like what I learned from now at Function Well, and that just the Poliquin style of like, the structural balance, all of that was heavily influenced. I think a lot of definitely Keegan's, and, I was lucky enough to sort of meet Joseph Coyne at one point there too.
Mm.
Probably, I would say my programming is heavily influenced by Christian Thibodeau.
Mm.
Um, Travis Mash as well. I've sort of basically studied every book that he's put out, and he's very like West Side Barbell, sort of maybe a modern approach to West Side Barbell and Louis Simmons type stuff.
Without the drugs.
And now, what's this? Right?
Without the drugs.
Yeah. That's it. And that's what actually really attracted me to Travis was he was getting weightlifters wicked results natural, and his sort of mission was to put the American weightlifting team on the map, and he pushed it a lot, and with some of his stuff, I think in terms of the max effort method and that maybe it's like not quite as effective as what I thought a few years ago, and then more recently working with Tom Shepherd, in regards to Jesus, that's like I truly believe that's like fast tracked my career a decade, which is yeah, just in terms of what I've learned from him, and sort of like you can't really pay for decades of time just coaching,
Mm.
and so like I pay him a lot, but it's like what I get from him, being able to just go to him, say, "What do you think about this?" Like, get him to rip apart my programming. Just, hey, I've got a like at the moment we've got a young girl who's she'll probably win the nationals in a few weeks for powerlifting. She's about 17, and I'm like, what can we do to get her good results now? But how can we turn her into a world champion? And like his wife is a world champion, like biggest squad of all time, that sort of stuff.
Mm.
So it's like that sort of stuff, and then just in terms of like all of the athletic stuff that he's done, and then probably from a mindset perspective, I would definitely say like Brendan Bashada went down that rabbit hole hard for 2 years. Like he's Oprah Winfrey's mindset coach, life coach. So it's sort of crazy, and so those would probably be the biggest influences and mentors. Working with Dan Martell a bit at the moment, in terms of like my business mentor and stuff.
Mhm.
And I think the influence he's had on me is been very, very large. And even recently, I think we went to an event where I don't know if it's probably, I'd say I have an idol in terms of like Dane Walker. I'd say like my goal is to be Dane Walker of fitness now. So it's like, be that guy. But Bedros Keuilian was at that event too, and I was sort of almost a little bit lost. And he's like, "Look, people just don't try hard these days." And I was like, "He's like, people just accept mediocrity." And I was like, "Dude, you're fucking on here, eh?" And he just said, "Live your standards." be the standards. And just like one thing that he said, and it was very, very strong, was that he went to a psychologist and he's like, I don't need this, and then but you always need a psychologist when you say you don't need one. But he said his psychologist he said to him, he's like, oh, how long do I have to keep doing this work stuff, like helping these people? He's like, when you die, he's like, if you don't have a mission, if you don't have a goal and you're not constantly striving to
Mm,
do something, you'll self-destruct. And he's
mm,
like, if you stop this, you self-destruct. So the day you get to stop is the day you die. And I thought
mm.
that was very, very powerful, especially for where the last 2 years has definitely expanded my eyes to a lot of different stuff, and it's also made me zoom out to sort of some bigger stuff. But yeah, sorry for that long sort of
Ah,
piece of string there, man.
that's
Yeah,
awesome. There's two things. One thing I'll share you a little story about Keegan. So,
yeah,
well, actually, two things about him. One, I always he always annoyed me because he always answered a question with a question, but that just made you think that he made you think about even the questions that you asked. Like he's such a
100%.
he was like, why he would like, why are you even asking that question? Like he made you really
Yeah,
dive deep into what it was that you were after in life before even talking about how to be a better trainer or something like that. And I
yeah,
remember we were doing a face-to-face course. It was actually in Function Well or Athletic Zone, and he was
yeah,
talking. We were talking about Olympic weightlifting and how difficult it is to learn it. And I said to him, it's just too hard to it's too hard for general population people. And he looked at me and he was like, what a terrible mindset to have. The reason you wouldn't introduce or teach something to someone is because it's too hard for them.
yeah,
And I was like, shit,
yeah,
you got
yeah,
me, you know?
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
and you're right, man. Like kids will come up to me and be like, how do you become a good shooter?
mm,
And what they want to hear is, oh, like a couple times a week, make sure you're getting in like a 200 or 300 makes. But
yeah,
the truth is, like, are you willing to have bleeding fingernails and like shoot
yeah,
so much that you physically are exhausted to the point where your family don't like you and your your partner's questioning how much time you're doing that, like,
yeah,
you
yeah,
got to get to that point where it's a true like
yeah,
obsession, if you want to be
hundred
at that
percent, man.
top level. And
Yeah,
people will just never understand that unless they do it and they're in it. How do you like filter out all the bullshit that you hear and keep people engaged with the basics? Because this is the basics that gets people to the successful goal that they want to get to. But how do you go about saying, no, no, don't go and get that? Like this squat, deadlift, bench is what is going to get you where you need to get to.
yeah. I think, man, like it's quite interesting in that part, and I think one thing I sort of contended there with for a while is like when people say, "Hey, look, just do the basics." If you understand the basics from, like, let's say, take a black belt in jiu-jitsu, it's like, they're all still going to do an armbar, they're going to do the same thing, but the degree that they do that at is just worlds apart from a white belt. And so
Mm,
when you really listen to all of the noise, especially on social media and stuff like that, is quite often the best of the best won't disregard anything. They'll take all the information in and they'll sort of like unpack it. But when you're trying to get someone, I guess, to stick to the fundamentals, it's like, how can you educate them an understanding of how to execute that at the highest level? And I think that's something that really keeps you engaged in the process. And I probably have to thank figuring out going through Christian Thibodeau's courses in terms of his omni contraction course, like understanding the power of eccentric, isometrics, concentrics. And it's like you might do an RDL, you do it with an eccentric, you do it with an isometric, or you do it, with some velocity. It's a completely different movement, and it has a completely different outcome. And one of the, I guess, the beautiful things about starting out as a CrossFit coach is like you get exposed to so many different methods, and that allows you to keep a little bit of creativity in, but also just like start to pluck different tools from different toolboxes. And so when it comes down to is like ultimately, from when you have a client, it's like the goal is just to keep them progressing forever. That's the ultimate goal. And so you're going to squat, bench, deadlift, do chin ups for the rest of your life. That's basically what you're going to do. But it's like, how do you keep that person progressing? And that's where it goes from being the basics to like you got to understand the fundamentals. But it's like, how can I apply that in this, like from this perspective, to make sure that this person goes from 10 pull-ups to 10 weighted pull-ups, if that's their goal. And that could be something like, we've got training a track lady at the moment. She's a 400-meter sprinter, and so she's a little bit slow off the mark. So it's like, okay, cool, we're going to take a squat and we're just going to do dead stop squats, and then we're going to do some heavy sled push to make her quicker off the mark. And you know, it's still the basics, it's still the fundamentals, but it's the application of that 100% makes a difference. And it's really interesting mentoring a lot of coaches, because you'll just see it. You can just tell in their retention rates. It's like they'll keep a client for 12 weeks, they'll lose weight, but then it's like that client's gone forever. And you can sort of tell the coaches that have done a lot of work in terms of programming and stuff like that, because their clients are with them for a long, long time. And the only reason a client's going to stay with you is because they're progressing, and so, and they're progressing and they're entertained to a point. Like my program at the moment is like, it starts out week 1, 8 sets of 2. Then week 2 is 2 sets of 3, and then 6 sets of 2. And it just adds 1 rep. Then it starts again. And it's like, it's boring as fuck on paper, but it's the most interesting program I've ever done in my life, and
Mm.
it's like it's really, really interesting. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
easy to make someone tired, but it's harder to make them better.
It's hard to make, yeah. And then it's like when you go taking someone who's good and making them great is like, yeah, it's really, really interesting at that point.
But I just wanted to ask you about. I shared one of your social media posts today on my page, and it was just about you talking about if you had an athlete come to you who wanted to be a top level in a particular field or particular sport, and you suggested a framework of taking a look at the top players. Do you just want to explain that?
Yeah, 100%. So like, it's success leaves clue, and this is something I did learn from Keegan. Is like, let's say for example, I've got probably the perfect prototype for this at the moment. Is she's one of my best friends. She's actually my housemate, but she's been one of athletes I've trained for a long time. Is my very good
Keeping
friend
a close eye.
Felicity. But yeah, yeah. But so she's played rugby in the UK. She's played everywhere, this sort of thing, and she wants to play in the NRLW. And so she plays the game like she's 100 kilos, like she's fucking stronger than everyone. Like she's an absolute physical beast. But she's only 65 kilos, And so what we did is like, okay, well, if she wants to be, in the NRLW in her position, we go in there and look at it first. And you could do this with basketball as well. It's like you go and look at whoever's in your position, and it's like, what is their body? So for this girl, we know we need to add about 5 kilos to her frame, because then she's already got the physical attributes. We just need to give her the body that suits that position. And so that's a really, really easy way to start off, is like, okay, cool. And you probably see it in terms of a long-term development of an athlete. Like one of the AFL girls I got, she's actually playing. She got drafted to the AFLW this year, but I was like, man, I wish we had this girl a year before, because
Mm.
like she's probably just a little bit undersized and underdeveloped, but she's actually thriving. Like she's playing very, very well. So it's like you take that body you look at the top players, top 5 positions in that, and it's like, what's their weight, what's their body composition basically with that. And so, because obviously growing muscle, losing body fat, that sort of stuff takes a bit of time, So start there, sort of program that. Okay, we've got to add 5 kilos, or we've got to drop 5 kilos of fat, whatever it is. From there, it's like, what are the physical attributes? And then so let's say, for example, you got a basketballer and their first step, or their cut, it's just not very quick. And so it's like, oh, what attributes do they need? And so let's say, for example, you want to get more agile and move left to right a bit faster. Something like a phase of loaded stretching, where it's like you're loading that tendon, you're getting better at force absorption. You just start to look for those qualities in terms of how can we get that physical quality there, to give them like the physical attributes. They need to use the skill set to get there. And maybe another example, I got one of the AFL girls. She physical, absolute physical beast. She's got everything now, probably the strongest, the fastest, biggest body in the league. She's done a lot of work on her mindset recently, and she just knows, she's been working on her skills really, really hard. And she's like, she just knows her reaction time's a little bit slow. So she's got the body, she's got the strength and conditioning, all of that's there. All she needs to do now is get 1% better at those skills, and she becomes an all-Australian. So it's you sort of go through that framework, and it's like you'll see a lot of good players will have, if they've got great skills, they just don't have the physical attributes, then it's easy to build. And especially then it's like if they have the work ethic, and work ethic is really only a product of two things, is do they have the ambition? If they've got the ambition to be great, and if they have that, well, then the only other thing is stopping them. Oh, I'm not good enough. This is going to be too hard. Or even if I do it, I'm not going to make it anyway. So you just sort of assess that.
You talked about evolution of yourself and your businesses. Obviously, your existing marketing and online personal training business is called Dylan 10.0. The previous iteration of it, I believe, was the Mamba method, which was inspired by my late great hero, Kobe Bryant. Did you just have a parting word about, why you chose that name and what sort of effect he had on you?
100%, man. So we picked, Mamba, just for, I believe, the 5 pillars. And off the top of my head, I should have written these down, of what made up the Mamba mentality. And it was I think passion, obsession, relentlessness, or maybe you can help me out here, but those 5 pillars just summed up, I guess, everything I wanted to be in terms of just pursuing the greatness and the work ethic in that. And and there's just Kobe, everything about him, man, that way he went about it, the relentless passion to pursue his craft. It's something I've always just admired and thought that it was very, very cool. And then in a sense, I think my former business partner, he was really into basketball as well, and it was almost named it that as a thank you to him as well, because I knew how much he loved basketball and all of that. And so it was that part. And I actually don't know if I've ever told him that, and I probably will at some point, but it was just I really am so grateful for that opportunity. And then where the transition happened, we actually so Kobe's highest score, 81 points. So we had this goal. It was once we hit 81 members, we've sort of achieved a pretty cool milestone. And then I always felt bad, because I was I don't want to use Kobe's name. It's I can't do this forever, but I was we're stuck with it for a while. And then it sort of, evolved into, once we sort of hit that milestone, it evolved into 10.0. And so the current iteration of that is that, my only goal with that business is to help, good coaches become the 10.0 version of themselves, and then share that with the world. And that's something I believe is fundamentally missing. And I hate being known as a business coach and stuff like that. I'm I just love coaching, and I'm I just want to help good coaches be able to fucking be the best fucking possible human they can be, and then show other people that they can do it too. And that's sort of where it is now. I think your mum gave my poster a like. Yep.
Oh, look at this.
Oh,
Oh, look at this. The pair
The
of
dream
influences.
team is back together.
It's been a while.
How are you, mate?
Good, mate. I'm well. Just good to
So good.
good to be just sharing the airways with a couple of just like influencers and like fitness professionals changing the game.
I wouldn't consider myself a fitness professional anymore, but I do appreciate. I still look like one, I guess.
Oh well, you're very checky.
I was gonna didn't even discuss that. I was gonna bring up Paul Check, but during the podcast, but we didn't get it.
Well, you're a former national level basketballer. You've organised retreats on remote islands. You become
Did do that.
national state level weightlifter, obstacle course racer,
Obstacle course.
and sixes and sevens Hall of Famer. So it's quite the resume.
The good thing about this is it's not live, and I can edit out the sixes and sevens. But JP Falvey is an absolute Brisbane fitness industry legend. The
Try my best.
best group fitness coach, CrossFit coach I've ever seen. Dancing, singing, just pure performance on steroids.
I try my best. What I lack in knowledge and know-how, I make up with willful enthusiasm.
So just before we get started in the draft, so part of my podcast is we bring people on with a subject matter and we go around in a one by one and pick from a particular topic. So this week's topic is fitness industry trends we probably like to have seen the back of. Just before we start, I just want to share one of my fondest memories of you two.
Oh.
And this.
Oh. Pandy, that's gonna cost you. Remember, I have lots of footage of you.
I know that you guys didn't know that I was here when I took this picture, so yeah.
I just like my hairline. Jesus.
yeah, you got more hair than me there, Phil.
Oh, Fowler. Jesus Christ. Well, that's some of our best work there.
All right, so draft topic, fitness industry
My
trends.
question is, Andy, how do you have all these photos? You've got this treasure trove of photos.
Don't worry. My archive of Andy is better than most, I reckon.
All right, so you guys are my guests, so you get to go rock, scissors, paper to see who goes first to select their fitness industry trend. So,
no, I reckon let's give it to Fowler because he's probably
okay.
I'll give it to the Kiwi.
All right, Dylan. So you get number one pick. What do you got?
My fitness industry fad that I believe is something that should have never seen the light of day is CrossFit.
Oh, controversial!
Fast out the gates with a hot take. Oh my god, there's going to be a lot of people that's going to be upset by that one, mate.
Okay.
We're going to have some sort of.
Come on, mate. Considering you're a former,
you're going to have to call all your old clients and tell them to stop CrossFit immediately.
Yeah. I stand by it, though. I stand by it.
But without CrossFit, without CrossFit, would sheer fitness ever have taken off, though?
Well, I stole the CrossFit Forging Elite Fitness or something like that. I stole their thing. It was like bringing elite fitness to the sharing industry. So, yeah, CrossFit was the original. Yeah.
Damn. Falvey, you're next.
Well, mine's actually pretty controversial as well.
Okay, I like it.
Because I've been in the fitness game, 2006. I'm going to say running. But because back in the day, this is obviously it's back in the day, there was no such thing as run clubs, social run clubs, this, that, and now it seems to be every man and his dog wants to be. It seems to be so much image and of your social status to be on which run club do you go to, or go to this run club, or let's do this, let's do that, and things like that. That's where I'm along with. It's because running right now, I think is at its absolute highest peak. With the influx of high rocks, obviously all the big running competitions around the traps. But that's mine. Not because I'm a crap runner, but as I said, I think it's something that's not always. It wasn't there, and it's come in, and I don't think it's something that's necessarily always a good thing.
I think you are a great runner over extremely short distances.
Very true. This is true.
So just to clarify, you're talking about distance running, right?
You run clubs that are so prevalent. Right now, and which obviously they have their place in certain aspects, but it's something that I don't think it's going to last the turn of time. Like obviously things like group fitness and things like that will always be a staple. I think running will have its peak, which is right now. I think it's at its absolute peak. And some might say that's the same as that was CrossFit a few years ago, which is on the decline a little bit for multiple reasons and things like that. But it's that's the Fowler's view.
Because people are dying.
I was avoiding that topic, but it's more so the variety of which people have from fitness competitions across the traps, and it doesn't matter what it is. It seems to be it's growing and only getting bigger. Where people are going, the average Joe obviously is not doing CrossFit. Where you think of things like High Rocks, which had 6,000 people in Brisbane or 5,500 in Brisbane, and a lot of them were just people who obviously were runners, but just your average Joes, not your elite level lifter, just people who obviously had a certain skill set towards running.
So High Rocks, to me, it just looks like a repackaged F45 CrossFit style event-based exercising, right? Same thing?
Yeah, I think it opens more doors because the thing about CrossFit, there's the test. The test of CrossFit always changes. Like you get to an open, always different workouts change and things like that. The thing about the High Rocks, it's like everyone knows the test. They know they got the 1K run into something. They got the 1K run into this, and so it can always be improved. Do at some stage. I think they will need to adapt it at some stage, whether it's change it, make it a variance, but it's certainly something that can be easily trained for, and the standard, barring a couple of movements, can be very, very easily held.
Those are two pretty good picks. I think you missed out on my favorite fitness fad is boogie bounce.
That was my number. That was going to come in. That was sitting 3 or 4 for me.
I fucking hate trampoline exercise classes.
Oh. Not just because you've got knees made of glass.
Those viral Instagram trampoline classes just drive me wild with all the strobe lights and the high knees and it's just absolute mayhem.
Yeah, I got to say it's not something that you'll probably ever see me do.
Have you ever done one?
Never done one, mate.
Have you, Dylan?
I reckon this would go well with the Tina Turner soundtrack, though.
Oh, I will not lie. That is an absolute truth. I would say that if this was out back in my early group fitness days, I probably would be an instructor in it as well as a Zumba instructor. to go on top of my Aqua and Bosu instructor qualifications.
Ooh, Bosu might make an appearance at some point during this little draft. All right, Dylan, backing up CrossFit's going to be a tough one. What's next?
Jesus Christ.
Probably I actually might expand on why CrossFit, just because JP pulled it up there before, and I was like, the big thing with CrossFit is that, look, one, it's designed to absolutely flatline anyone that is got a little bit of ticker about them, but it's also designed to make ex-athletes, people that like think that they could have made it, think that they can be something in a sport. And so, like, when you do CrossFit, you get this little piece of ego that makes you think, fuck, maybe I could just make it to the games, or maybe I could just get to the regionals. And we've all got that sparkle in our eye. And so the crazy thing is about CrossFit is you do end up pushing it way, way, way harder than you could. You end up either broken, left on the floor in a puddle of dust. You strap up your knees, your back, your shoulders, your thumbs, basically everything. You just strap from head to toe in tape, and you stumble across the line in something like the CrossFit Open, which basically you obliterate your nervous system for 5 weeks and just absolutely destroy yourself. And you roll over to your mate and say, I'll get you next year, So you're just hooked into it. It's probably the worst thing you could ever do to yourself.
Doesn't everyone in our age group think that with clean diet for like 6 months, maybe some performance enhancing drugs, some better sleep, that if we just rocked up to maybe just like a sporting event and they needed an extra player, that we'd be sweet, we'd be good to go.
Especially
I know
with like our
Falvey thinks
knowledge
that's
and
about the
experience
Broncos.
now.
Well,
Falvey rocked up to Suncorp.
I'm making a Masters Rugby League come back in a couple of weeks.
Here we go.
No, November actually, Masters Rugby League tournament. So that could be a sight for sore eyes. And see, I don't know what'll go first, my hamstring or my calf.
Is that the Gold Coast Pan Pacific?
Yeah.
I'm doing that for basketball.
Oh yes.
Oh, that's so good. Dylan, you got to do it for CrossFit.
No, see, CrossFit, they cancelled it. That's what I was going to originally do.
They cancelled CrossFit.
Yeah, there's no functional.
They cancelled.
They got the functional fitness is gone.
Damn. So do you have an actual pick, Dylan, or are you just doing CrossFit?
I would have to go to the F45 games. Would definitely be the worst fitness fad I've seen along the way. High Rocks is actually not too bad because, as Fal pointed out, it's good for the everyday fella that just wants to have a crack. But the F45 games, that was just taking the piss. That was a poor effort of a thing.
That's where they used to do those, like that 3-level thing where they'd go up and around it like a thing, isn't it?
On the trailer, yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
I always thought I'd be a
jump across the bench.
Yeah.
Bench hops. Bench hops coming to 2028 Olympics.
I hated bench hops. I did F45. I did F45 for a while when I was courting Hannah to try and impress her.
Oh, you would have dominated.
I was like doing like power cleans, and the instructor came over and was like, just like, I was like, fuck off.
Oh, well, I'm going to go controversial again. Fitness trackers.
Oh, okay.
Like, to me, there's obviously some benefits to it. That's a simple, yeah, absolutely. But every man and his dog now, you see him, oh my God, I just burnt like 450 calories in that class. Oh my God, I just did 1,200 calories. That was phenomenal.
There's a guy I play basketball with who's gonna love this, but his name's Alex, and he wears his heart rate monitor when we're playing basketball, and he's always like, "How many calories did I burn this session?"
Exactly right. So when you get people obviously honest that basically rule their fitness and their lifestyle off, okay, they'll finish a class, they've just buried themselves and they're on the ground. Oh, I'm just going to go for a quick 45-minute work. I just didn't quite get the calories I needed to burn.
How many maps?
Yeah, yeah, my zone effort points. There we go. But yeah, MJ will hate that one. But yeah, no, that's the right thing. Obviously, they got their perks, and obviously, you can train. Heart rate training is obviously got incredible importance to it. But I think there's a big difference between the average Joe doing it and people using it for obviously health and performance, and like in a group fitness environment, it's some people just take the piss.
I think the other thing with that is how grossly inaccurate some of these devices are as
Correct.
well. Like,
exactly right. Obscene amounts of money to be. Oh, it's within like 20 beats of your heart rate. And you know it'll burn within like 50 to 100 calories of what you're doing, and just because you just did 100 calories on the assault bike, does that? But it says on here I just did 100 calories on the assault bike, but I've only burned like 32 calories on my watch.
my second pick, surprise no one's gotten this, is the electric abdominal stimulator.
Oh, you got that was what I had with Bunchy. You've potentially taken my third there, Pandy.
I know you own one of these, Falby.
Mate, I actually own a tens machine. I was doing to try and get rid of tennis elbows. So does that count?
I had a look on Amazon. These are still like red hot sales items. The people are selling thousands of these. Literally on a quick Google search, it says this right underneath the Amazon ad for the product. There is no evidence to support it.
Well, Pandy, we'd see the tone here. You've got me and Dylan have gone. We've gone to bring a
Very
bit of heartfelt seriousness to your show, and
I've got a draft. I'm fully prepared. I've got like a proper draft board. I just wanted to start with some light, like break the ice ones, and Dylan went straight in for the kill to attack the culture.
Oh, he did. He went hard.
My next one's online trainers. No, I'm kidding, Dylan.
I can almost back that up sometimes.
Well,
I do admit sometimes I'm a part of that problem, Andy. I am a part of that problem, and sometimes I feel ashamed of fueling that what shouldn't be fueled at times, but it is what it is, you know.
Yeah, but that's in saying that, that's the same as absolutely anything. You from all the good things you say and from there, some people are going to take it the wrong way, and they're going to deliver a message to other people that's in your eyes is against your moral compass. But that's not necessarily on you, but there's certainly some.
If I knew, say 10 years ago, that all I had to do was call myself knees over toes guy and just show the exercises that I was giving my clients that I learned from Poliquin, I'd be a millionaire.
Yeah.
You were before your time. You were doing retreats. You were running retreats and doing all these things before. There was all the active lifestyle retreats over in Bali and things like that.
Yeah, we just went to Norfolk Island by accident. We should have went somewhere better. Dylan was the first online trainer. Dylan was the first online trainer in the world, pretty much.
He started it all.
He has the first YouTube video ever related to fitness.
Right. He makes Lane Norton seem like a reserve grader. Yeah, but you got to say, I actually had this discussion with someone else I know that you boys know, that this person reckons you're one of the most driven individuals who once you set your mind to something, it was very much to be unwaverable.
I think we all have that obsessive quality of if you want to achieve something, you do it, right? Like we're all like that.
I know. I've been trying to find a wife for years and I still can't.
But you try really hard.
Shoot.
I'm going to have to go with a holistic Holistic health coaching would be my next one.
Oh, wow.
Oh, snap to the heart.
So he's gone.
Holy
He's
shit.
gone. He's gone. What's he gone? He's gone CrossFit. CrossFit first.
Holistic health style, holistic lifestyle coaching.
Oh,
He's gone for the CrossFitters and now he's gone for the Checkies.
And
oh,
big thing is like it's just when people go into that holistic lifestyle, just life, they'll just neglect every single thing else. They'll be on the piss every night, eating like shit. They're 40% body fat, but the ice bath, that's the thing that's gonna fix them. You know, it's the ice bath. I was just fed up, to be honest. I was just like, look, you know, you can do all this stuff, and it's like, you know, seed oils, you know, like the reason you don't breathe correctly, you're sunning your butt crack, all of this sort of stuff. If you don't do that, your life's going to be absolutely terrible. Not the fact that you have no responsibility, no self-awareness, or you actually have a fucking job. It's like it's sunning your ball sack that is going to help you live an amazing life. And
there you go.
Yeah.
You've got, mate. Fowler's really come on very heavy-handed tonight, Pandy.
Gonna
just
have to get
unloading my frustrations in the fitness industry.
Considering the fitness industry on all three of us has probably been the greatest influence on everything we do.
No,
Yeah.
I don't have any political persuasions for the American elections, but I did find it interesting. I'm not sure if you're familiar with. Well, you would obviously heard of JFK, but RFK was one of the presidential candidates who was running. He was a liberal candidate, but he's gone to independent, and now he's joined up with Trump. But his whole thing was he was talking about like chemicals in foods and the sort of chronic health epidemic, which is in Australia as well, but obviously more so in America. And I just found it interesting that it made, yes, he joined Trump, and whatever you think about that, I don't really care. But the fact that he's managed to bring that into mainstream media and probably got some people thinking about that is a great thing, you know?
Yeah, like you see it in a lot of even the top performers now, like all the high performing CEOs and stuff. Your Zuckerbergs, your Jeff Bezos, and all of these guys, they're all in good shape now, you know. And so that definitely is a trend in terms of that. And you know, it's even like the sharing industry stuff is like it always starts with the top of the top, slowly filters down. So like if the richest man in the world's getting in shape, you know, it's going to be the next business owners, and then that'll filter down to the everyday man, hopefully. Yeah.
For someone who can't play basketball, Andy's videos I watch a lot of, and for someone who has got the online set in the presence of a rock, I watch all Dylan's videos. So obviously you two are doing something right.
Falvey, you're up next.
But abs, 8-minute abs, 6-minute abs, 10-minute ads, whether that's an online influencer giving, if you do this 6-minute ab program or a TV show, yeah, let's just pump them out. If you do these abs for 8 minutes, I guarantee you 3 times a week, you're going to have a 6-pack. Order now for $4.99 and you get a free ab mat thing that you suck around your waist. It'll help burn extra abs. But you look at it, all the fitness tests for the police and the fireys and all this sort of jazz. Okay, you've got to hit 30 sit-ups in a row or whatever. Like, how does that even quantify to be part of a test?
It's going to hurt you, Falvey.
Oh, actually, that'll hurt. Big Sammy Butterworth is the Bosu king, actually, back in the day.
Bosu ball.
It obviously works great for stability. He's squatting 360 now, so maybe that was the answer. Is the Bosu ball?
When I first moved over to Australia, my first job was at Fitness First in Brisbane City CBD, the top of Adelaide, on the corner of Adelaide Street and Wharf Street. And the first thing they did is they sent you away for like a weekend learning. And at that time, that was when Paul Check was the man. Him and Paul were still friends. Everyone was like walking around in their barefoot Vibram shoes. And everyone was doing cable pulls with your client standing on a Bosu ball upside down. That was just the way to get in shape.
Oh,
And then everyone was doing their chakra zone exercises from the Paul Check How to Eat, Move and Be Healthy book. You do your questionnaire and you'd find out you had a fungal infection. So then you had to do some Bosu holds.
To get rid of the fungal infection.
You must have been one of Check's brightest students back in the day.
Oh man, I spent so much money on that stuff.
And now you're breaking down crossover dribbles, turnaround, hammer dunks, and backflip travels. So
just glad we met Dylan in the dark days so that we don't have to pay for his time.